What is virtue? Is it one thing with different parts, or are the parts of virtue all the same? Protagoras thinks virtue has different parts. Socrates thinks this is a mistake. Socrates questions Protagoras. He, in the original dialogue, finds a contradiction in Protagoras' definitions. In the original dialogue, which we will display, Protagoras is going to have a contradiction, as Socrates finds it. In our dialogue, we're going to elaborate, we're going to better define Protagoras' definitions.
Now, I, Protagoras, want to ask of you a little question, which, if you will only answer, I shall be quite satisfied. You were saying that virtue can be taught. That I will take on your authority, and there's no one to whom I am more ready to trust. But I marvel at one thing about which I should like to have my mind set at rest. You were speaking of Zeus, sending justice and reverence to men, and several times while you were speaking, justice and temperance and holiness and all of these qualities were described by you as if together they made up virtue. Now, I want you to tell me truly whether virtue is one whole, of which justice and temperance and holiness are parts, or whether all these things are only the names of one and the same thing. This is the doubt which still lingers in my mind.
There is no difficulty, Socrates, in answering that the qualities of which you are speaking are the parts of virtue, which is one.
And are they parts in the same sense in which mouth and nose and eyes and ears are the parts of a face? Or are they like the parts of gold, which differ from the whole and from one another only in being larger or smaller?
I should say that they differ, Socrates, in the first way. But they are related to one another as parts of a face are related to the whole face.
And do men have some one part and some another part of virtue? Or if a man has one part, must he have all the others?
By no means. For many a man is brave and not just, or just and not wise.
So you would not deny, then, that courage and wisdom are also parts of virtue?
Most undoubtedly they are. And wisdom is the noblest of the parts.
And are they all different from one another?
Yes.
And has each of them a distinct function, like the parts of the face? The eye, for example, is not like the ear, and has not the same functions. And the other parts are none of them like one another, either in their functions or in any other way. I want to know whether the comparison holds concerning the parts of virtue. Do they also differ from one another in themselves and their functions? For that is clearly what the simile would imply.
Yes, Socrates, you are right in supposing that they differ.
Then no other part of virtue is like knowledge, or like wisdom, or courage, or temperance, or holiness?
No.
Well then, suppose you and I inquire into their natures. Now tell me, Protagoras, do you admit the existence of folly?
I do.
And is not wisdom the very opposite of folly?
That is true.
And when men act rightly and advantageously, do they seem to you to be temperate?
Yes.
And temperance is what makes them temperate?
Certainly.
And they who do not act rightly act foolishly, and in acting thus are not temperate?
I agree.
Then to act foolishly is the opposite of acting temperately.
It seems so.
And foolish actions are done by folly, and temperate actions by temperance.
Yes.
And that which is done strongly is done by strength, and that which is weakly done by weakness.
Yes.
And that which is done with swiftness is done swiftly, and that which is done with slowness slowly.
I agree.
And that which is done in the same manner is done by the same, and that which is done in an opposite manner by the opposite.
Quite so.
Once more, is there anything beautiful,
Yes.
to which the only opposite is ugly?
There is no other.
And is there anything good,
There is.
to which the only opposite would be evil?
There is no other.
And is there a shrill tone in sound,
True.
to which the only opposite is the deep tone?
There is no other but that.
Then every opposite has one opposite only and no more.
That is so.
Then now let us recall our admissions. First of all, we admitted that everything has one opposite and not more than one.
We did so.
And we admitted also that what was done in opposite ways was done by opposites.
Yes.
And that which was done foolishly, as we further admitted, was done in the opposite way to that which is done temperately.
Yes.
And that which was done temperately was done by temperance, and that which was done foolishly by folly,
Yes.
and that which is done in opposite ways is done by opposites.
Again, yes.
And one thing is done by temperance, and quite another thing by folly,
Of course.
and in opposite ways,
Certainly.
and therefore by opposites. Then folly is the opposite of temperance.
Clearly.
And do you remember that folly has already been acknowledged by us to be the opposite of wisdom?
I do remember.
And we said that everything has only one opposite?
Yes.
Then, Protagoras, which of the two assertions shall we renounce? One says that everything has but one opposite, the other that wisdom is distinct from temperance, and that both of them are parts of virtue, and that they are not only distinct but dissimilar, both in themselves and in their functions, like parts of a face. Which of these two assertions shall we renounce? For both of them together are certainly not in harmony. They do not accord or agree. For how can they be said to agree if everything is assumed to have only one opposite and not more than one, and yet folly, which is one, has clearly the two opposites, wisdom and temperance? Is that not true, Protagoras? What else would you say?
This is our remake. Again, we hold the same positions, she being Socrates and me being Protagoras.
Now tell me, Protagoras, do you admit the existence of folly?
Yes, I do.
And is not wisdom the very opposite of folly?
That's true.
And when men act rightly and advantageously, do they seem to you to be temperate?
Now, I disagree, Socrates.
How so?
Listen, Socrates, would you agree that moderation is a characteristic of temperance?
It is.
Then allow me to propose an example. A man who spends all his time working for charity would be considered to act rightly and advantageously, would he not?
He would.
By your definition, this is sufficient to call the man's actions temperate?
It is.
But suppose that man forgoes moderation in his actions and overexerts himself to the point of physical exhaustion. Is he still acting rightly?
No, he's not.
So moderation is more than just a characteristic of temperance. It is an essential feature, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Do you agree that when men act in all ways with moderation, they are called temperate?
I do.
And the opposite of moderation is excess?
It is.
So if someone is acting in excess, they are not acting temperately. In other words, the opposite of temperance is excess.
Yes, I suppose so.
So it seems that all the aspects of virtue are still as different parts of the face.
Yes, it would seem so.
I would. My name is Saeed Kian. I did the intro to Youth Pro, and I was also Protagoras. I'm a freshman, and I'm a political science and economics major.
Hi, I'm Heather Taylor, Socrates in both skits. I'm a senior, majoring in philosophy and crop and soil environmental sciences.
Hi, I'm Sean McGrady, Sean Patrick Clayton McGrady, and I was Youth Pro, and I introduced the play Protagoras. Well, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm a sophomore majoring in philosophy as of now. Once again, I have no clue.